Okay, so this is going to be part 2 of ICD-10-CM. We're going to walk through the second components that was discussed in this week's lecture. So if we review the steps of coding as we discussed, and we're going to go back to the example within week 1's exercise, and we looked up a Colles fracture. So with our main term, we have fracture, and we're going with the traumatic fracture. And we're going to look for the type of traumatic fracture, and it is actually a Colles fracture. Notice once we get there, we have a C note, and that C note means mandatory to go to this location. So we're going to go to Colles fracture. Okay, so now we've located and gone to the path of Colles fracture, and our code is S52.53. Remember, we noted that we have a dash that's letting us know that our code is incomplete and we need an additional character. So if we go down to our legend, and we notice that our legend is going to tell us with the dot that we need an additional character. So now we're going to look this up in our tabular. So once we get to our tabular, and we're going to verify that code of S52.31, okay, because we're going to note that it is the right radius, okay, of where we are. And notice we have a dot here, and that dot is telling us that we still need to complete the coding. This is the point of going to your tabular, is that it's going to give you those instructions. So where do we find our instructions? We're going to find our instructions going back to the first 3 category. The category, which is the first 3 characters of our code. So let's go there. So if we go back up to the category of the code where it begins with S52, notice this is where we're going to find our instructional notes. We have several notes here. A fracture not identified as displaced or non-displaced should be coded as displaced. We have notes around excludes 1 and excludes 2. And then we have our table that's going to help us build out our 7th character. Okay? So for the code that we're going to complete, we have to come here to make sure we're reading the instructional notes, and based upon our documentation, we're going to assign the correct 7th character. So this is how you would use the tabular to verify the code as well as reference the instructional notes. Follow those steps when you are coding, so the 8 steps that were identified in the lecture, to make sure you're landing on the correct code and coding it to the highest level of specificity.